Hello. This story is about a 7-year-old boy that was playing a game of chess with not another human, but a robot. It's a true story that took place in a Russian chess open in 2021. The game gathered a lot of interest with the boy playing a robot. The game had a lot of spectators watching and enjoying the game, until something very frightening happened. The boy rushed the robot in a certain move, and the robot did not like to be rushed, as it needed time to choose a move. It apparently had mistaken the boy's finger for a chess piece and broke his fingers. By the time the crowd could grab the robot off the boy's hand, his fingers had already been fractured. The boy continued to play the game with his hand in a sling. The management said that the robot was given to them by a loan, and they had no control over it. Thanks for watching The Assassin Rapper, and if you want to stay up to date on new content, then please subscribe and be sure to hit the bell to be notified on new content. Michael first noticed he could see the future when he was a little boy. He was in the kitchen when he told his mom, "Be careful cooking, there is going to be a fire." Michael's mom Judy checked to see was anything on fire, and it wasn't until a few minutes later there was a fire broke out, but luckily she put it out very fast. Judy found it strange wondering how her 8-year-old boy knew there was going to be a fire, when she was certain there was not one sign of it a few minutes ago when Michael warned her. The next time Michael noticed he could see the future was a few weeks later when he was in school. He was walking to school when he had the premonition the school bus in front would crash into a car. No one would get hurt, but he sensed it would happen, and sure enough, it did. But luckily, like his premonition, no one got hurt. These premonitions carried on through Michael's adulthood. They became different though, because now when he had a vision about something, it wasn't clear. He had a vision that his friend Mark was going to end up in hospital, but he couldn't figure out how he ended up in hospital. Luckily, it turned out to be something simple and not serious. Michael learned how to deal with his premonitions, and because they were so blurred compared to when he was younger, he even began to try to ignore them, unless of course someone was in real danger. One day he got a premonition that really shook him up, as he could see someone was going to shoot him on Friday the 13th of January, and it was now Thursday. He became paranoid and locked himself into his room after telling his wife make sure no one would come into it. He was confident that if he made it past Friday the 13th, then he would be able to live his life as normal before getting this vision. He even had his father's gun with him. It was Friday the 13th. Michael was sitting down, scared so much that someone was going to break through the door and shoot him. He looked at the clock. It was only a few seconds to midnight. He hoped once he made it past midnight, then he would be safe. Suddenly, as the last seconds of midnight ticked away, his hand involuntarily held the gun to his head. He screamed in horror, never guessing the person who would kill him would be himself. Thanks for watching The Assassin Rapper, and if you want to stay up to date on new content, then please subscribe and be sure to hit the bell to be notified on new content. Driving without a license is amazing, and I wish I had done it a long time ago. I had lost my driving license due to reckless driving, and I had to redo my driving lessons. I couldn't be bothered doing my driving lessons all over again, as I was short on money. It seems like everything is coming on top of me. One day I had to walk in the rain, as I didn't have a car anymore, and my financial situation had worsened, as I couldn't even afford driving anymore. Then one day somebody borrowed me their car, as they saw me walking in the rain. This person is my neighbour, and he asked me about my car, and I told him everything about me losing my licence and not having any money. After hearing that, my neighbour suddenly wanted me to drive his car, and he wanted to sit in the passenger seat, but said that because he had a driving licence, it would stop me from experiencing great things if he was to be in the car. I started driving his car, and I noticed the rain never touched the car, and nor the winter cold air ever froze the car, because I didn't have a driving licence. When I hit someone, I thought I had killed them, but then they got up and they said to me, "Because you were driving without a licence, I am still alive." And she walked off. I couldn't believe it, and it felt good to drive without a driving licence, and I felt no road rage or even sleepiness. Even if I did purposely fall asleep at the wheel, any person I had hit and killed, they weren't dead, because only drivers with licenses can only kill people. I never knew the benefits of driving without a licence, and I wished I could have done this years ago. When I drive through haunted roads and creatures of the night stop and stare at me, they don't dare cross the road when a driver without a licence is driving through. It terrifies them, and when I hit my car against another car who has a driver with a driver's licence, it is instantly their fault, and only they sustain injuries and consequences of the car crash. Whenever I run through a ghost or a dead body, both of them become part of the living. Driving without a licence is amazing. I still get chased by police, and I guess they don't want people knowing the great benefits of driving without a licence. Thanks for watching The Assassin Rapper, and if you want to stay up to date on new content, then please subscribe and be sure to hit the bell to be notified on new content. A lady called Sharon Myers disappeared in a New York City hotel while visiting for a weekend. The NYPD were investigating the case, as well as a detective by the name of Jerry Wilson. Jerry had put together so much about the case and couldn't piece anything together at first, but he had then suddenly realized something very strange in the elevator's CCTV footage. It wasn't as simple as that though. He looked through the footage for hours, trying to see anything new jump out at him. The main things that jumped out at him was Sharon entered the elevator and went to the 6th floor. Then she seemed to step out into the hallway and enter the elevator again. Then went back in the elevator and back down to the ground floor. She continued this 3 times, from ground floor to 6th floor, each time stepping out into the hotel's hallway on the 6th floor, apart from the 3rd time. She wasn't seen exiting the elevator when it stopped on the 6th floor the 3rd time. That is when she disappeared. Jerry couldn't figure it out. He sometimes walked through the victim's last steps to see what was happening inside their head, or what could have happened to them meet their last living moments. But what made this strange is what made her disappear. He felt it stupid and even plain crazy, but Jerry had decided to get the elevator in the same pattern as Sharon did. Nothing was strange until he stepped out onto the 6th floor for the 3rd time, and suddenly he felt very hot. And then suddenly fire burst through the hallway, and he could see a figure like a devil or a demon. He saw the number 666 on the wall, and he was never seen again. Of course, none of the fire was caught on camera, and not even Jerry in the hall after his 3rd time riding the lift. He had realized what had happened to Sharon, but it was too late, because now he had met the same fate. Thanks for watching The Assassin Rapper, and if you want to stay up to date on new content, then please subscribe and be sure to hit the bell to be notified on new content. White walls all around. It almost looked like a hospital. It was clean. White tiles, white sink, white walls, and the roof was white. Since the earliest of times, white has been associated with purity and innocence. Then again, asylums are generally white, and they reflect the exact opposite of purity and innocence. Instead, those white walls hold the mentally insane, those that are not of sound mind and are a danger to themselves and others. The irony of the contrast between the two varying white rooms is ludicrous. He looked into the mirror. Deep brown eyes gazed back at him. The freckles surrounding his nose looked as though God himself spread flakes on his face to create him. His brown hair sat atop his head, unkempt. He scratched his head to cure a sudden itch and continued to stare at himself. His reflection stared back, unmoving. He opened the faucet and let the cold stream of water pour into the sink. After a moment, he cupped his hands beneath the water and scooped what he salvaged in his hands onto his face. Some of the water splashed onto the floor. He didn't seem to notice. He stood there for a moment more, face dripping with water, still staring into the mirror. What he saw disgusted him, and he washed his face once more, almost as if he was trying to wash his very skin off in the hope something more appealing lay beneath the first layer. He opened the medicine cabinet and slowly extracted a small box. He set the box on the sink and opened it. He removed a single shiny razor and placed it beside the box. He returned the box from whence it came and picked up the razor once more. He turned it in his hands thoughtfully, not diverting his gaze from the mirror. Razor in hand, he rolled up the sleeve of his long-sleeve black shirt that he had worn to both parents' funerals. The thought crossed him that both his parents had since departed this world, but not a single hint of emotion prevailed from this morbid thought. He glanced at his now exposed wrist and back to the razor. The moment the blade touched his skin, he drew in a quick, sharp breath. The icy feel of the metal made him hesitate for a moment. The razor shimmered in the artificial lighting of the fluorescent light bulb hanging directly above him. He put the blade down and sat on the end of the bathtub, head in hands and breathing deeply. He glanced at the weapon of self-harm and then at his wrists. Then back to the sharp, unforgiving steel he had placed on the edge of the sink. He wondered how it would feel to cut so deep the blood poured out of his sliced wrist, to see his blood spill and cover everything around him. The thought of blood made him smile slightly, ever so slightly. It was but merely a wisp of a smile, if even that. He liked blood. The thought of blood made him think of the time he took the life of a stray cat he had lured into his home, how it had purred contentedly while he had petted and stroked it, followed by the hiss of terror it let loose when he squeezed and bit into one of its ears, bit so hard he felt the cartilage crunch under the pressure of his teeth, but not before his teeth had ripped into the skin. The blood that spewed from the missing cartilage crunch under the pressure of his teeth, but not before his teeth had ripped into the skin. The blood that spewed from the missing appendage had excited him, and he laughed ever so sweetly at the sight of the feline's ear he had spat on the floor. The sounds the cat made were otherworldly, and one can only imagine the pain it was in after having an ear forcibly removed. He held onto it tightly, so tight it had become so breathless the sounds of agony had simply faded into desperate attempts to draw even breath to sustain its miserable life. Still chuckling softly to himself, now covered in the blood of the cat, he reached into his pocket and brought out the Swiss Army knife he'd accumulated through less than desirable means. He looked at the blade after opening it, marvelling at the craftsmanship behind making such a beautiful, smooth and sharp blade. His thoughts made their way back to the cat, and he turned the cat onto its back, lifting its head to expose the throat. With a slow, precise movement he had practiced in his head, he drew the blade deep and across the exposed neck of the cat. He sliced deep, but not deep enough to sever the head. All sounds and movements the cat had been capable of carrying out ceased immediately the moment the knife penetrated and severed the blood transport systems. The blood that resulted brought a magnificent and eerily beautiful smile to the boy's face. The blood sprayed him and the surrounding vicinity, but that did not faze him. Instead, he hoisted the cat up and shook it violently in an effort to see just how much blood he could extract from the deceased animal. That was but the first of many animals that met their end at the hands of the sadist. He picked the blade up again, a glimmer of excitement in his eye as he pressed it to his wrist. He shuddered as the cold steel touched him, just as he had done to that cat. He pressed deep and hard and drew the razor in a swift upward motion. The cut was thin, as he was using a new sharp razor, but the pain was intense. He felt as though someone had set fire to his wrist. The blood was little at first, and came out slowly, but as he set the razor down, he noticed the floor beneath him was covered in blood. His hand could not be seen beneath the blanket of red that now covered it. The blood would not stop pouring forth from his self-inflicted wound. He had cut too deep. He knew something was wrong the moment he set the razor down. With each bit of blood that escaped his body, it seemed to take with it an incredible amount of his energy. He slumped into the bathtub, blood beginning to puddle in it. His eyes fluttered open after having closed for a stint of time. He tried to raise his hand, but found he could not. Blood was all he could see now. It was everywhere. The bathtub seemed to be filling with it as it continued to pour from his wrist. He couldn't seem to keep his eyes open. They closed. He tried to open them, but found he could not. He could feel the darkness beginning to take him. He wanted to fight it, but his life force had been sapped with the immense outflow of blood. He decided the best thing to do would be to accept it. Eyes closed, he tilted his head back, and did not even feel it hit the porcelain tub with the force it did. He couldn't feel anything now. It began to almost feel euphoric. He felt disembodied. Nothing mattered. All that existed was the darkness. He wanted the darkness, and the darkness wanted him. It needed him. The darkness took him, and he went, with a smile on his face. He liked blood. Thanks for watching The Assassin Rapper, and if you want to stay up to date on new content, then please subscribe and be sure to hit the bell to be notified on new content. Darren was looking forward to his live stream. He was driving home from an interview with a publishing company about a publishing deal he had just signed. He was really looking forward to write his first book and was so thankful he was given the chance to be able to write one. He knew that his fans were very loyal to him, so he was glad he had something to share with them. He viewed his fans as his friends. When he got home, he got everything ready for the live stream and started talking about how his meeting went and how he is looking forward so much to get his first book published. He said, "Hey everyone, thanks so much for your support, and I have something really important and special to share with you. I am just back from a meeting tonight with this awesome publishing company, and I will be publishing my first book very soon." Suddenly Darren heard a noise outside. He said to himself and his viewers, "What was that?" Then he went over to his window and looked out. He could see 3 police cars outside across his street. He took another look, then went back and told his fans what was happening. He thought maybe his neighbours had a fight, but he hoped whatever it was, everyone would be okay. He continued to stream until a few minutes later his door burst open. A man held a gun straight to his head and there was a shot. The shot hit the man in the leg and the police arrested him. It turned out to be a jealous fan who envied the success of Darren, who would have loved his success being an influencer. Darren made a video the next day and named it The Insane Influencer. Thanks for watching The Assassin Rapper, and if you want to stay up to date on new content, then please subscribe and be sure to hit the bell to be notified on new content. Brooke used to have a problem sleepwalking. She would love if she knew she could just sleep and stay asleep in bed, but unfortunately she sleepwalked and did very strange things while sleepwalking. One night Brooke got out of bed and walked down her stairs and down to the basement and did ironing while all in her sleep. Another night Brooke was driving for a few miles all in her sleep. Brooke was very lucky to have not have crashed her car. The thing is with sleepwalking is you should never wake anyone up from sleepwalking, because if you do, they will more than likely suffer confusion arousal. You might put them in more danger if you do wake them up. One night Brooke got up and while asleep walked down her road and into a local construction site. There was a crane and she climbed up the crane a whole 150 feet high in the air. Brooke walked over the top of the crane while asleep and stood on the edge of it. Thankfully, a policeman drove along and spotted her. He had guessed it was Brooke as he knew about her before from other incidents. He knew that if he called out to her, she would suffer from confusion, arousal, and more than likely would fall as a result. He didn't know what else to do but to call her mom. Lucky Brooke had her phone on her with her pyjamas, which her mom knew she used to do, just in case they couldn't find her after sleepwalking. Her mom rang, and because of her ringtone registering with her as something she knew and her mom's voice, she quickly woke up and thankfully she lived to tell the tale. Thanks for watching The Assassin Rapper, and if you want to stay up to date on new content, then please subscribe and be sure to hit the bell to be notified on new content. Sarah was always having hallucinations since she was a little girl. When she was at school, she used to frighten her friends, shouting, thinking there was monsters in the hall at school. But of course, there was never anything there. It was just her hallucinations. She always loved the idea of driving a bus, and once she had the chance of going for an interview for the job, she was so happy. Of course, she couldn't mention her condition, especially in a job where she would have to drive members of the public around. A few weeks later, Sarah was on the bus, and she felt a weird vibe off the driver. He seemed like a creep, and she could see him looking back at her in the mirror every so often. She felt very uncomfortable and got a shiver up her spine when he drove past her stop. She told him she rang the bell, but he kept driving, ignoring her. She screamed to him stop. Suddenly she felt nauseous and then realised she had got the job. She was not the passenger, but she was the driver of the bus that she was driving for her new job. She could hear the passengers shouting as the bus was driving so fast, and she had been screaming, thinking she was a passenger. The bus was driving so fast and was about to bash into a wall when she suddenly, thankfully, was able to stop the bus, thanks to the brakes working so good. She knew straight away her dream job was gone. She cursed her condition. Thanks for watching The Assassin Rapper, and if you want to stay up to date on new content, then please subscribe and be sure to hit the bell to be notified on new content. Sarah was looking forward to the party on Friday. She was practicing her makeup in her bedroom, hoping to be able to get the same effect of her favourite YouTuber. She loved the cool way her makeup was done in all her videos. She used to watch her videos for hours on end and practice her tips. In school, everyone was talking about the party. It was the biggest party of the year, and the hype around it was huge. Sarah's mom had warned her about the dangers of drink and drugs, and her mom was very worried about it at the moment, because a few weeks ago, Sarah's high school had a drugs awareness meeting. Sarah would never touch drugs, and didn't know why her mom would ever suggest she would. The night before the party, Sarah had realised Twitter changed its name to X. She thought it was a silly idea. She was telling her friend Lucy on the phone she was really looking forward to the party, and at the moment she was on X. Sarah's mom happened to be walking past her bedroom and heard her. She barged in and got mad at her and grounded her, and of course she wasn't allowed to go to the party. Her mom said, "I was told all the names ye kids use for drugs these days. They said at a meeting names for ecstasy could be Molly or X, and I can't believe you were actually on X. My own daughter actually on ecstasy." No matter how Sarah tried to explain to her mom she meant she was on Twitter X, her mom wouldn't listen, and Sarah missed the party while she was scrolling through X, cursing the name change. Thanks for watching The Assassin Rapper, and if you want to stay up to date on new content, then please subscribe and be sure to hit the bell to be notified on new content. It started one night when I was waiting for the bus. There was a woman waiting next to me, humming a tune. It didn't really stand out to me as strange. She to me was just a woman humming a tune. Inside the bus she was sitting behind me, and she hummed the same tune. All of the bus journey, which was 20 minutes, she hummed it. I didn't find that strange either, really. Well, maybe just a tiny bit. But it was the next day I was waiting for the bus. I found it very strange. A different woman was at the bus stop, humming the same tune. I felt very strange knowing that it would be very unlikely two different women would be singing the same tune, especially a tune that I never heard of. It might be kind of okay if there was a pop song that was being played on the radio morning, noon and night, but there was something strange about it. To be quite honest, it sent shivers up my spine. I knew it was the same tune as I was listening to it for the first night for so long, and sure enough, the woman sat behind me, this new woman, and hummed the tune all the way out. On the third night, I couldn't believe my ears and eyes, as once again a different woman was humming the song. This time I asked the woman, "Excuse me, do you know what song it is you're humming? It's just that there were different women humming that same song." The woman smiled and said, "It's just a song that popped into my head." The next night I was at the bus stop, and thankfully no woman was there humming. I was on the bus and strangely found myself humming the song. I tried to stop, but I kept humming again. I got out a newspaper to read, and when I opened it up, the 3 women hit me with the headline. 3 different women involved in a hit and run 3 different times. It was the woman humming the tune, and it was the other woman. Oh, it was all the women. Even saying this is absolutely crazy, but that's what it was. It was all the women. All the women who were humming the tune. I couldn't believe it. I felt a shiver up my spine. As I got off the bus, I was humming the tune again. I tried my best to stop, but then a car sped up and hit me and killed me instantly. Now I can see the other woman on the other side, and we have to urge to stand at bus stops humming into women's ears. Now I know the reason I start humming it. The ghosts hum in the ears of the living without them actually hearing it, but the spiritual hum goes into their subconscious, and once that happens, well then, they're a ghost sooner or later, like me, after being ran over, of course. It's a vicious cycle, I suppose, but I just couldn't resist humming, and getting other women to embrace humming. Thanks for watching The Assassin Rapper, and if you want to stay up to date on new content, then please subscribe and be sure to hit the bell to be notified on new content. Simon was always interested in starting his own line of food. He worked in a hotel for years and really enjoyed it, but in all of his free time, he used to work on a special ingredient that would actually grow meat in a lab very, very fast. He eventually found a way to use his love for science to help him achieve his dream. He had a secret ingredient that he happened to have come across by accident. He had it trialled for safety through all the legal groups he had to go through to get his product on the market. Finally, it hit the shelves. He did beef, lamb, and even chicken, but all of that was only in his head. He hadn't even tried the food himself yet. He promised himself that he would grow it first and make sure it looked exactly like what it was meant to be, but it had to be real meat. He had organised a small, close-knit group of his friends to attend a dinner in his house, and he had planned not to tell them it was his new experiment until afterwards. He was hoping they would love the food so much they would give great reviews. When the time came that he did have it on the market, they all enjoyed their meal and were very satisfied, until an hour later they felt strange. That was when they all turned into the food they had just eaten. Thanks for watching The Assassin Rapper, and if you want to stay up to date on new content, then please subscribe and be sure to hit the bell to be notified on new content. Karen was a very talented painter and sculptor. She offered the mayor's wife a great opportunity of doing a free portrait of his wife. The mayor got lots of strange requests and letters and offers, but took a great interest in this. He took such interest that he said he could not accept such a thing for free, so he commissioned Karen to do the portrait. Karen met the mayor's wife in their living room and she spent hours painting her. She was afraid that his wife Mary would get tired of posing, so she asked would she like to take a photograph and paint it from that. Mary told her that she would prefer to pose for it. A few hours later, the portrait was done. The painting was left in the living room with an extra surprise of a sculpture of Mary. When the mayor entered the room and saw the beautiful painting and sculpture, he was so impressed, he gave Karen more cash. That night the mayor was worried because his wife hadn't come home and it was already past midnight. He was used to her going out socializing with friends, but she wasn't replying to any of his texts. The next day he was sitting in the room, staring at the sculpture, wishing he knew where she was. He rang the number Karen gave him, but there was no answer. He suddenly jumped with fright as he saw the sculpture's eyes were moving. He walked over to it slowly and said, "Oh my God, Mary, are you inside there?" Suddenly a chandelier fell from the ceiling and crushed the sculpture and Mary to bits. It suddenly came rushing back to him what he did to his last wife. He asked her to check out the sculpture, knowing he had loosened the chandelier and he would pull a rope which he had attached to it, making it collapse on top of her, which it did, killing her instantly. Suddenly a book fell off a bookshelf and he read the title, Karma by Karen Karma. He opened it up and the pages were blank except for the first one, which described everything that he had done to his last wife and how much it had traumatized his wife's secret lover, Karen. He froze as he read the last words. Their mare was injected by Karen as she knocked him out and made a sculpture around him, trapping him in the same thing he trapped his wife with, a sculpture. Thanks for watching The Assassin Rapper, and if you want to stay up to date on new content, then please subscribe and be sure to hit the bell to be notified on new content. Michael just qualified as a pilot and was so happy to finally be ready to fulfill his childhood dream. He was a passenger on this plane, but soon he would be ready to fly his own one. He was relaxing, enjoying the flight, so excited about the reality of the next time he would be on a plane, he would be actually flying it. He didn't mind if they went through turbulence or even if a person next to him was snoring. He was determined to enjoy every moment of the flight. The flight attendant asked him would he like a drink of wine, and he said he would love one. She passed him the glass and he thanked her. He drank the glass and after a while he felt kind of sleepy. He woke up a while after and didn't realize how long he was asleep. He felt like he was dreaming, as every passenger on the plane seemed to have disappeared. He nearly fainted with shock and ran up to the cockpit and realized the door was open. The plane was in autopilot, but he knew that it was very dangerous to be left like that for long more. He tried to contact the ground, but the communications were broken. He took it into his own hands to land the plane, still trying to come to terms with why he was the only person left on the plane. He finally got to land the plane, and when he did, there were lots of police cars and police holding guns to him ready to arrest him. They were sent a video of him throwing the passengers out of the plane. He would be going to prison for the murders of every passenger that was on the plane, instead of him becoming a pilot. Up in a high-rise building in New York, his twin brother, who he never knew, was happy knowing that he finally got revenge for him being the twin that was thrown from foster family to foster family, while his twin brother was given to a rich family and had the best of everything. He smiled, still excited about recording the video of himself throwing everyone who was knocked out by gas out of the plane. Of course, everyone else thought it was Michael, and no one would know of his poor, broken twin. Thanks for watching The Assassin Rapper, and if you want to stay up to date on new content, then please subscribe and be sure to hit the bell to be notified on new content. Barry was looking for true love, and was getting tired of looking for the perfect love, until one day, while browsing through a dating site, he saw a description that was like it was written just for him. It was from a beautiful looking girl called Tracy. She wrote, "Looking for a kind man who is interested in romance, food and poetry." Barry smiled, staring into her eyes, feeling himself fall in love with Tracy, even though he had just seen her photograph. What really grabbed his attention was she mentioned the three interests he loved the most, which was romance, food and poetry. He was very disappointed that his ex-wife never appreciated those interests that were so important to him. Over on the other side of town, Tracy opened her email, excited when she saw a reply from the dating site. She read a long, detailed email from Barry, where he expressed his interests and that she had shared the same. She replied, and they had agreed to meet for a date at a restaurant. The night went so well that the next date, Barry cooked Tracy a romantic meal in his home. They enjoyed the meal, and afterwards he said to her, "Tracy, I feel like I'm falling in love with you, and I hope you enjoyed this meal. And since you love the same three things as me, which are romance, food and poetry, that is why I had decided to cook you a meal, and I also wrote you a poem. I hope you like it." He took out a page and read the poem. "Love is like a mutton chop, sometimes cold and sometimes hot. Love is mighty, love is strong, so is mutton left too long." Tracy smiled and said she loved the poem very much and enjoyed the meal so much. Barry smiled, proud of his meal. It felt good cutting into his ex-wife after cooking her and serving her as a mutton chop to Tracy. He wondered should he tell her it was a real person, not an animal, but he had decided not to, and hoped she would appreciate his culinary cannibalism soon. The poem just came to him while preparing his ex-wife for the meal. "Love is like a mutton chop, sometimes cold and sometimes hot. Love is mighty, love is strong, so is mutton left too long." Thanks for watching The Assassin Rapper, and if you want to stay up to date on new content, then please subscribe and be sure to hit the bell to be notified on new content. Isaac was a cult leader in rural Texas. He called himself the Savior, and his followers followed every word he said. He had promised them that they could trust him, and that no religion in the world could give them the truth which he could. He lived in a commune with many others, and they were self-sufficient. They used to grow vegetables to feed themselves and go hunting in the woods surrounding the commune to survive. Isaac didn't worry about them escaping the woods and going back to society because he knew that all of his followers had believed in every word he said, and he also believed in every word he said. Each night they lit a big fire outside and gathered to praise their leader Isaac. He loved the praise and loved the attention. The police used to drive down to the edge of the commune now and then to see was everything okay, but they didn't seem to have any reason to break up the community, because to them they were just people wanting to live off-grid and be self-sufficient, and they weren't harming anyone, so they left them alone. One night Isaac dropped a bombshell with them. He had told them that they all had to give their lives to the higher power that was guiding him, and by doing so they would all live in eternal greatness and come back to a much beautiful Earth-like planet. The followers were hesitant at first, but after a while of Isaac's preaching, he reached every single one. They all locked themselves into a room and gassed themselves to death. Isaac didn't tell them that he would be wearing a gas mask under his head cover. When he was happy that they all were passed away, he took off his head cover and mask and ran outside to the fresh air. He slept sound that night, but in the morning he was woken by a noise. It was then he had realized that his followers were in the room looking at him angrily, but he knew they weren't alive. They were just walking dead, and that was the start of many days and nights of terror he had for lying to his followers. He thought about ending it all, so one day he had finally decided to throw himself into the river, and when he did, he could feel death reach up and grab him until he knew it was all over. It was then he woke up as one of them, but the only difference was this time his followers were all against him, and he was powerless, even in death. Thanks for watching The Assassin Rapper, and if you want to stay up to date on new content, then please subscribe and be sure to hit the bell to be notified on new content.